Hey guys, Crave here, and I've been wanting to do this follow-up video, and here it is. So just sharing another way to basically configure ElvUI, and this upload will focus on making it look like what you're seeing right now. If you'd like a more in-depth guide on how you can go about getting the add-on and installing the add-on, then check out my other guide, which you are seeing in the upper right part of your screen. So that little video will link you directly to that menu of sorts I made in the other upload. Now, if you're on a mobile device, just make sure to use the link in the description box below. Now, also, someone asked in my Mute Rogue guide if I could do a video for the list of add-ons I use. I thought about it and I tried to, get something going inside my head, but unfortunately there wasn't much to talk about. It would be simply easier just to mention my add-ons. So, at the moment, I mainly use ElvUI, Skada, XCT, and Bagnon. So what I don't use as much anymore is FontDamageChanger and TellMeWhen, except when I'm on my DK. That's mainly because it makes it easier to manage all the skills that Death Knight has. It's still pretty... well, it's not as complicated as it was back in Wrath, but yeah, I use it pretty much sparingly. Now, for all these add-ons, I'll add them in the description box below, although they can be pretty much just taken from curse.com, with the exception of ElvUI and XCT, which is from the ElvUI main website. Now, for this upload, however, I'll focus on the current look, which means involving 3 add-ons, which is ElvUI, of course. ElvUI was actually the purpose of this video, but yeah, mainly because some people might be wondering about the other add-ons. I'll also throw in Skada and XCT, but just really briefly. Now, I won't be very detailed, like I said, but I'll make sure you can get a gist of how things should go. You can then basically just experiment on your own and maybe find a better way to configure things. Now, as I mentioned in my first ElvUI guide, you get a more personal experience of the different add-ons when you do it like that. Alright, let's get to it. Okay, so we're going to be focusing on ElvUI for this part. So the first thing I want to mention is basically grids. So as I mentioned in my first video, it's going to be a very important feature of the UI. Now, if you're not seeing the grid lines, that's mainly because the grid size is too low, or the value for the grid size is too low. So make it to about 100, and there you can see the grid lines. Okay, so one of the things that you've noticed in the earlier clip I showed you is that most of the stuff was basically just towards the bottom of the screen, or positioned at the bottom of the screen, with the buff bars and the stance bar at the top middle part. Or at least that's how I wanted it. So basically what we do is we use the grid feature to just move things around. Okay, so something like that. So the player buffs will be somewhere in the middle, and if we had a stance bar, it would be positioned somewhere here, but that's up to me. If you're fine with seeing your stance bars and your player buffs, I mean the non-consolidated buffs near your minimap spread out in the left and the right side, then that's fine. It's really up to you. Okay, now again, I will show you later how I have most of my frames positioned in the grid feature, but that's going to be for later once we get into one of my main characters. Okay, so the next thing is that I had my minimap at the bottom. Okay, let me just disconnect that BattleNet frame and put my minimap at the bottom right part. Okay, so we're just going to be doing some rough estimates. We're not going to be doing exactly, or making it exactly look like what you saw earlier. Just, this is just for you guys to know how things basically go. Okay, we can lock that. Alright, so we pretty much have our minimap where we want it to be. Now, it's really up to you if you want your minimap smaller or you just want to expand the size of your chat window. Now, if you want to make changes to the size of the minimap, so that's basically in the general options in ElvUI, and go to your minimap sub option, and you can adjust the size from there. Now, one thing you can also do, if you're fine with the size of the minimap, what you can do is increase the height of your chat window, and that is done here. Where is that chat window? Oh, it's this one. Okay, let's increase it. Okay, too much. DPI settings for the mouse are too high. Let me just make adjustments manual. I'm guessing that's around 219. Okay, so it's about 220. Okay, anyway, just estimates. So there you go. So now we have enough space or at least so far it's the left and the right side is sort of in sync. Now I'm doing that mainly because I also want to have something to have a basis for positioning the next add-on, which is Skada, but let's do that later. Now we're going to be the next part is going to be about making adjustments to the player frame to make it look like what you saw earlier. And if you notice, the health text and the mana text were outside of the health and mana bar, and with the mana bar inside the health bar. So to do that, let me just make adjustments to the player frame so that it's not so much in the bottom part. Okay. Next we go into unit frames, player frame. Okay. The first thing we want to do so that it's easier is that we want to detach the mana bar from your health bar. So that's done via this feature, detach from frame. Okay, and yeah, we can move it right now if you want, if that's what we need to do. Okay, so let me just move the cast bar out of the way again. Reposition or resize your cast bar as you see fit, and let's move this up. Okay. That should be somewhere here. There you go. So your mana bar is now basically inside your health bar. If you also want to make adjustments to your health bar, just adjust the height here if you don't like it too big, or make it bigger if you want to do that 3D portrait thing I did with my earlier video. So it's really up to you, so you can see your character better, but I didn't opt for that anymore, so I just made it smaller. So I think that's pretty good, or a good estimate of what I was doing earlier, or in the earlier clips I showed you. Now next is we want to move the health and mana text outside of the health and mana bars area. So for the text, let's just automatically reposition it to the right. Okay, I don't think the text is very clear. Let me just make changes to it. In the basic unit frame section, let's pick Hodge. Okay, that's looks a bit blurry. Let's use Frizz. Okay, and let's make the size around 16. Okay, that should be clear. And let's get rid of the monochrome outline. It makes things a bit fuzzy. Okay. Oh, no, very clear. Let's use a basic outline. Okay, that's better. So let's get back to your health text and move it downwards. Okay. And there you go. Now we should do the same for the mana text. Text Y offset. Okay. And there you go. So it's of course a little bit different from what I have, but yeah, the position is somewhat like that. Now, if you notice also, the health text for my character was color white, and that made it basically easier for me to see. So if you want to make changes to that, it's this part, okay, health, okay. Now, when you hover above the text format box, you're given a tooltip with a whole bunch of options, so just play around with it. Now, if you just basically want to get the color white for your health text, just remove the health color tag. Okay, click OK, and there you go. It's color white now, so it basically stays white all throughout. Again, you can customize this part to however you want. And let's see, what am I missing? Oh, the action bars. So just I won't go too much into detail, but basically, like what I mentioned in my first ElvUI guide, you do have the option. This is bar 4. Okay, again, as I mentioned, you do have the option to basically hide certain bars or disable or enable them. But later, I will again go over my one of my main characters' UI, and I'll show you the mouse over feature, how it's very useful. But for this one, let me just show you how it works. So if you use mouse over, you have to hover above the area for the action bar to show up. Okay, and one other thing, what bar is this? Let me show you guys quickly. That's bar number 1. So you can also change the number of buttons that you can use per bar. So as you can see, it's getting smaller as I'm reducing the number of buttons available. So let's bring it down to 5 or 6. So you're seeing lesser buttons in the middle part of your screen. Let's put that back up to 12. You can also change the number of buttons per row, so you can get a a pretty much a square-like shape if that's what you want, squarish, or narrower rectangular shape, or a smaller rectangle. It's really up to you, but I just wanted to show show that to you guys so that you get a better understanding of what happens later when I show you the actual UI that I'm using. And so let me see. Oh, one more thing. Again, positioning is up to you, but I position my objective frame on the left side. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's how I got some of the other stuff set up. So again, you will have to do the same for the other frames, or position them wherever you want. Change the position of the mana bar and the health text and the mana text, and that's up to you guys. Next up, we want to configure the Skada window, which is this one, what you're seeing right now. And if you notice in the earlier preview I showed you of my main, the actual UI use, my Skada interface doesn't have a title bar, so that's pretty easy to remove. But we won't do that right now, mainly because we need that to click and drag the actual interface of Skada. Now, another add-on that you might want to try this on is Recount, if that's your main damage meter, but I haven't used that in a bit, so but I don't think it's impossible for you to do that. So I'm just using the right chat window frame from ElvUI to sort of get a more accurate sort of to get things in sync or in line with the mini map. Anyway, this will do fine, I guess. It's just an estimate. So just if you've got a mouse that can adjust your DPI settings, that would make it easier. Actually, the mouse I'm using has it, but it makes such an really loud noise when I switch DPI on the fly. So I'm not gonna do that to you guys. Not gonna annoy you. Anyways, okay, we basically pretty much have it where we want it to be. So we now get into the options of Skada, and let's configure it. Now what we simply do is get into this part. So the window, or the name of the window, go to title bar and remove the check mark for enable, and that's it. So this is what you're gonna see. Okay, as you can see, there's no title bar, but it still measures the your damage, your DPS, or if you're healing output, etc., and stuff like that. Now again, you have to configure Skada on your own. If you want icons showing, if you want different bar type, different font, different data to be showing up, that's up to you guys. Okay, and that's pretty much it for Skada. I just basically, what's important is that I just positioned it just beside the mini map and sort of inside the right chat window of ElvUI. And also don't forget to make sure to lock the window so that that little anchor, triangle anchor thing doesn't show up anymore. And there you go. And the last part, the last add-on, not really the last add-on I used, but the last thing I'm going to be discussing for today is basically XCT, so which is your damage font. So let me just load it up, and let's do a test for you guys to see the basic output. Okay, so that's me having it configured. It will normally look messier. The default state of XCT is going to look really messy, and not something I guess most people would appreciate. So this one takes some configuring. I think there's supposed to be another add-on with a similar feature or function. I just forgot the name. So if you want to use that, then of course you go ahead and use that. But this is the add-on of choice I want for my floating combat text. So this not only affects your damage text, but everything that happens to you, damage done to you, buffs you receive, and things like that. Now, again, not too much detail into how it's done, but wait, let me just get rid of the chest. Okay, stop. Okay, so as you can see right now, let me just cancel because I didn't talk about it. There is another button here on the right side beside the test option. You have your move option. So it's also like the grid feature in ElvUI, but it's its own feature, so you can't depend on ElvUI's grid feature for this. So what you can basically do is define the different areas. So you've got healing, incoming, damage, outgoing. You've got outgoing critical strikes, critical effects. You've got special effects, or such as procs, and then you've got your general messages here, and things like that. There's a whole bunch of other windows that you can actually configure, but I limited XCT to these 6. So again, it's right here under the frames. You can enable or disable them. So one of the things I disabled is class combos, class power. So I left the others. I also disabled loot, currency, and money. I didn't need to see that since they pop up in my chat window. And yeah, one thing I also want to mention for XCT is the use of the alpha. So later we're also going to be using the same feature for the action bars in ElvUI once I go over them or get back to them. But yeah. So sometimes, having a whole bunch of floating text can be really annoying. But sometimes, if you're also like me, I still want to see some information if I can quickly glance at the area where it's at. So my suggestion is to just simply lower the alpha value, so that it doesn't become too annoying. Okay, so I gotta get back into it. So let me just make some changes to the alpha. So this one's 50 for general. So if you notice, the general test message here goes in and out, and it will depend on the value specified here. So yeah, I still do want to see basically a whole bunch of text, but it's not so prominent that it's very annoying and just right there in my screen. Okay, and what else? Yeah, so those 2 things. Basically, the setting of the alpha value for the numbers and the text. Of course, you can change the font on your own. It should be right here. Where is the changing of the font? Where is that? Oh, here you go. Okay, so there's that option there. But the more important parts are the grid feature for XCT and using the alpha feature, or the making your text slightly a bit transparent if you don't want it so prominent on your screen. My criticals, I think I left them at 100. Let me see. Outgoing criticals. Oh, just at 75. So sort of partially visible. And yeah, so that's basically it for XCT. It's very useful. Again, if there's this other add-on, I just can't remember the name, you can also use that in place of XCT. And so the last thing I want to discuss, just getting back into ElvUI, is basically the 2 things I mentioned earlier, which is the mouse over feature for the action bars. Let's just bring it up. Which action bar is this? Okay, action bar 4. So if you notice, it only shows up when I need it. So basically when I want to mount up, or want to change my exotic munitions buff, or I want to unsheath my weapon, or if I want to do my Tanan jungle check, if I've done some of the certain dailies, or if I've downed Kazakh, yeah, a whole bunch of stuff. But what happens here is that it's so much cleaner. The only things at the top are basically visible are my buffs, the non-consolidated ones, and basically everything's at the bottom, and not everything is showing up immediately. So as you can see here, so even my pet bar is also using the mouse over feature. So again, to basically just keep things a bit clear. Now the other thing or clean, not clear, but the other thing is, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is the use of the top bar, and the way I use the alpha feature or the transparency feature. Let me just see which bar is that. That's bar 2, bar 5, bar 3. Okay, so it's bar 2. So what I do is, normally I would set it to 100% for the topmost bar, and for bar 5 it's not very obvious to you guys, I guess, but to me it's a little faded out, and that's mainly because I don't want to be seeing just with XCT, I don't want to see certain things too prominently in my screen. So to sort of have an illusion, or maybe less having things less pronounced on the screen. So what I would normally do is that if there are any skills I want to watch for their cooldowns, so what I do is I place them on the top bar. So let's say for this one, this is a Wrath skill for my pet. What else? Okay, disengage, maybe disengage. focus fire, freezing trap. Maybe, yeah, I want to make use of explosive trap. So basically, let's just use these three as an example. I'm not sure if it's again evident on your end, guys, but yeah, these things are more sort of not using the transparency feature. So at least for these particular skills on the top bar, it's easier for me to see which skills are again coming off cooldown, or basically it's going to be useful in raid environments if you're sort of approaching the burn phase or the execute phase, and you want to be able to sync it with maybe, I don't know, some skill like raid-wide skill like bloodlust or heroism. Now if you're in PvP, you want to make sure you inform your teammates when your certain burst CDs are going to be coming off cooldown, so you can sort of time your burst, whatever it is you want to burst down one of the other players down. You got to time it. You can't just do your burst on your own. So yeah, that's the purpose of using the alpha feature or the transparency or the fading feature in the action bars for ElvUI. So I just make sure to have every important skill here up top and make sure they're 100% shown, and the other skills at the bottom with keybinds to them, I just simply use around 60-50% visibility for them. And that's it, guys. Thanks for watching this this follow-up video on how I set up ElvUI and how I made it work with other add-ons I use. Now, if you have any comments about this upload, you know where to leave them, and leave a like on your way out if you thought it was good. I'll talk to you soon.